Hi, everyone. I want to start thanking the CD Foundation and our sponsors. Thank you so much for making this awesome event possible. Welcome to this session and welcome to my home in Seattle, Washington. We are going to talk about how you can accelerate your culture of innovation and with everyday inclusion and belonging practices. I've presented this topic a few times last year at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, at the DevOps World and GitLab Commit. And I added some content for today's session. So thank you so much for attending because it's a really important topic. My name is Shaaron Alvares, and I work as an Agile and DevOps transformation coach at Disney. I am also an editor at InfoQ and a DevOps advocate at the DevOps Institute and at the CD Foundation, in fact. I am not something important. I am not an HR or D&I professional, but that's exactly the purpose of this talk. We all belong, and anyone can and should influence the future of inclusion in technology. First, we look at the research data to better understand the impact of diversity on innovation. Then we'll describe some practices that you as an individual, a team member, or people manager can literally deploy right after this presentation within your organization to drive a greater sense of inclusion and belonging within your teams. So before we start, I want to look at how we define diversity and inclusion. Diversity here is not limited to race or culture or gender. It includes the various dimensions and intersectionality. In diversity, we include diversity of culture, thought, strength, age, gender, race, sexual orientation, identification, and many more. And we often have multiple dimensions of diversity. So that's important to remember. You probably heard the statement from Verna Myers, diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. I like to challenge this statement and propose that inclusion is being invited to design the party, not just dance at the party. So based on the last 10 years research, the benefits of diverse team is absolutely irrefutable. We know that organizations that foster racially and cognitively diverse cultures outperform non-diverse ones by 35%. And organizations where men and women are equal in numbers that practice gender equity earn 41% more revenue. And teams that operate in an inclusive environment outperform their peers by a staggering 80%. So there are various reasons for that. Cognitively diverse teams are more likely to generate unexpected and out-of-the-box ideas. They are able to empathize better with various cultures. Therefore, they develop products tailored to a diverse and global customer base, and they prevent bad, short-sighted product decisions. They also contribute to developing non-diverse teams because they challenge group thinking and the status quo. And in turn, diverse workplaces attract high performers and more diversity, and they foster a greater engagement and retention. So we now know that the case for diverse teams is no longer up for debate. Yet we don't have to explain that technology is not diverse. In fact, the DORA report and the Accelerate book published global data in the last 3 to 4 years that showed that less than 25% of the DevOps workforce identifies as minority, and only 6% in fact identifies as women. But great news, we have two major opportunities that we can seize now. The first one is the hiring horizon for the next decade, and the second opportunity is the millennials workforce. We know that the technology skill gap is estimated to cost the US economy $2.5 trillion over the next decade, and that 2.4 million jobs will be unfilled over the next decade as well. These gaps impact negatively productivity, customer services, innovation, and growth. And one way to meet these shortages and grow your talent pool is to actually hire and develop a diverse workforce and cultivate inclusive teams. On the DevOps front, based on the 2019 Enterprise DevOps Skill Report by the DevOps Institute and the 2020, 37% of companies are currently actively hiring, and 14% will be hiring in the next 12 months. So the second key opportunity I mentioned and I want to talk about is the millennials. Millennials are born between 1981 and 1996. They are going to represent 75% of the global workforce by 2025, which is just around the corner. They fully recognize the relationship between cognitive diversity and innovation. And in fact, today we know that 83% of millennials are actively engaged when they see that the organization fosters an inclusive culture. And 47% of them are actually actively looking for diversity and inclusion proofs when sizing up potential employers. So that's right. In order to attract millennials and a diverse talent, we need to ensure that we have an inspirational, robust, and genuine diversity and inclusion strategy in place. Because 54% of women research a company's diversity and inclusion policies before accepting an offer. And 61% of women specifically investigate companies' leadership team before accepting an offer. That's because women want to be inspired and they want proof that their hard work will pay. So there is no doubt, we know that diversity makes teams better, it makes organizations wealthier and more resilient, it makes leaders more trustworthy, and it is the right human and societal thing to do. So why aren't companies more diverse and inclusive when the business case in favor of diversity and inclusion strengthens every year? So we say, and we just heard that diversity equals innovation and revenue. But does it really? Well, it actually doesn't work like that. Diversity in itself won't drive innovation. And that's the reason why hiring diversity in itself hasn't led to much progress in the last 15 years. So the equation is a lot more complex than that. We need diverse teams, yes, but we also need a team psychological safety plus team inclusive collaboration plus managers inclusiveness and managers practice of equity. And that leads to innovation and revenue growth. We need all of these parameters to work together every day, and we can't remove any one of them. So teams need to feel included and safe before they can better collaborate, perform, and innovate. So we can see here that we have two key opportunities. The first one at team level and the second one at a manager level. And this is validated, by the way, by recent research from Gartner. And I wrote a paper about their research titled Boosting Team Inclusion at the Workplace Using Artificial Intelligence Technologies. And the link is in the deck. So organizations face three key challenges for actualizing inclusion effectively. First, we are unaware of how teams interact and how they perceive their current inclusion state. So daily interaction inform about inclusive behaviors, but we don't track these at work. Then team leaders are not actively involved in fostering inclusive environment. And finally, inclusion is not embedded in everyday decision. So, but we can't improve. So let's look at the one practice, which is the team inclusive collaboration self-check. We can't improve if we don't know where we are, right? So the first thing to do is to simply assess how inclusive we are as a team. And to do this, I introduced the team inclusive collaboration self-check in various organizations I worked with in the past. Collaboration is really important, but in order to get the full benefits of diversity, collaboration needs to be inclusive. And collaboration, by the way, is the #1 hard skill mentioned in the 2009 Enterprise DevOps Skill Report. And it's the #2 skill mentioned right after agility in the Big 9 organizations values identified by MIT and Glassdoor. So what is the team inclusive collaboration self-check? Let's look at it. The objective of this practice is to identify what it means for a team to be inclusive and develop a team personal roadmap to improve on their inclusive objectives and practices. The activity is composed of 3 steps: gather data, generate insights, and decide what to do. And those 3 steps, by the way, are inspired from retrospectives activities. In gather data, the team asks themselves what it means to them to be an inclusive and collaborative team. They collect this information on stickies or on an online board, and that's why here on the slide you can see I used idea boards, which is an online board, so we can actually practice this activity from anywhere. We don't need to be in the same room. It's really important to identify tactics and actionable behaviors that the team can apply every day in their day-to-day work and interactions, not values or vague behaviors such as we matter or we listen. We listen is great, but who do we listen to and how do we listen? What does that look like? For example, some of the best actionable behaviors I've seen and that you can see on this board are: don't interrupt when someone is speaking during a meeting. Let them finish. Ensure that they are understood by validating what they say, and then share your opinion. In step 2, generate insights, the team reviews the tactics collected, discusses and clarifies these, combines them when there are duplicates. It's not an easy exercise to do, and it requires, in fact, a lot of inclusive conversation and decision-making. Then, because we're trying to develop a roadmap for becoming more inclusive, the team votes on the tactics they lack and they want to prioritize. Here, I use the ideas boards to run the entire activities, and we can also do dot voting with that tool. So teams can't reasonably improve on 30 different inclusive behaviors at a time, right? Just like a retrospective. So we ask them to pick the top 5 behaviors of practice that they voted on and that they want to prioritize and work on. Here, So in decide what to do, that's the second step, the last step, the third step. In decide what to do, the team decides how they want to work on these prioritized behaviors. A practice I implemented with few teams is to add the top 5 behaviors in a table and review it at the end of each sprint, generally every 2 sprints. During the retrospectives, the team discuss which behavior they do well, which one they need to focus on by voting with a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs sideways. It's important to practice every day and hold everyone on the team accountable, because inclusion is not a one-time thing that happens once a year, right? It's a behavior that needs to be lived through daily interactions and decisions. We can also deep dive in some of those specific behaviors. I work with teams who wanted to drive more accountabilities and more results, in fact. They wanted to identify action they can do to model the most voted on tactics. So a team selected, when we have a strong reaction to someone, we check our assumptions and ask ourselves why we have those reactions. So to do this, they identified 3 questions. To deep dive into that practice, they identified 3 questions that they would ask themselves when they face this situation. And those 3 questions were really impactful. Could I be wrong in my perception of the situation? What do I know about myself that may have triggered this reaction? And in what other ways could I have responded to this person or situation? The outcome of this exercise were very beneficial. The practice created a shared understanding of what inclusion, belonging, and collaboration meant to everyone on the team. It improved awareness of behaviors. It made it very clear that actualizing inclusion is the responsibility of everybody on the team. And it improved the team's trust, sense of psychological safety, and their decision velocity as well. If you want to run this activity with your team, here are some best practices. We know that a team in a speak-up culture and environment are 3.5 times more likely to contribute their full innovative potential. For these reasons, allow your team to define the game and the inclusive behaviors they want to display and that are based on their team experience. And becoming more aware and more inclusive won't happen overnight, but inclusive collaboration must be lived every day during every interactions and decisions. Managers need to support the team's inclusive investments and dedicate time for it. And finally, make these practices open and transparent. Don't hesitate to share and post the work on a shared repository. Most team dynamic exercises are kept within the team's boundaries, but sharing this can inspire and benefit an entire organization. So now let's look at a few manager inclusive practices around including the team in the hiring decision process. With great power comes great inclusive delegation. So let's see how, as a manager, we can inclusively delegate that power. This is a real situation, by the way, I was part of a few years ago. 2 directors and a scrum master and a senior manager, all Caucasian, interviewed several technical project managers / scrum masters for a product and DevOps team. They landed on 2 candidates, but really were not 100% sure about their final decision. One candidate was a Caucasian male, David, and the second candidate was Sangeeta, a woman from a diverse cultural background. So the managers had a clear preference at that time for David, and when asked, they said they liked him by roughly 65% and Sangeeta by 35%. They were still debating, so they asked me to interview both candidates because at that time I was overseeing all Scrum Masters training and development. So instead of having me run the final interviews, I asked them to involve the team themselves, actually, and allow them to facilitate a real-life event or agile ceremony with the candidates. And they chose a backlog refinement because they wanted to include the product owner in the hiring process as well. And the team identified features they wanted to refine with both candidates. The result was eye-opening for the team and for the managers. You are certainly familiar with the say we recruit in our own image. So right after they interviewed both candidates, 100% of the team unanimously agreed that Sangeeta performed way better than David. There was no doubt among the team, especially in terms of the candidate hard skills. They spent an hour with each candidate, but based on Sangeeta's interaction with the entire team, they felt that she had always been on the team. So this experience was a real success. Everyone on the team felt valued, trusted, empowered to make an important decision that impacted them. And everyone bought into the hiring decision process. So the result was so impactful that the directors decided to roll out more team inclusive interview practices across the company. So there are many other opportunities that managers can use to include their teams in hiring decisions where they can help remove hiring biases. Managers can include their teams in reviewing resumes and even in drafting job descriptions to make sure that these are more inclusive. Managers can also partner with other managers to design an inclusive bar raiser program. Amazon has a bar raiser program, but not specifically dedicated to inclusion. An inclusion bar raiser program is an outside of the team interviewer who is brought into the hiring process as a neutral third party that helps keep assumption and unconscious bias in check. So by bringing in somebody who is not associated with the team and the manager, we ensure that we hire for culture add and innovation and not for culture fit. And we are therefore more likely to make objective, inclusive, and better long-term hiring decisions. So the third opportunity I want to touch on are the developer relation or advocate roles. Developer or DevOps advocates are really important influencers and disruptors in the industry. A lot of companies have those roles now. They contribute in designing the future of technology culture. And internally, they navigate across a wide range of strategic stakeholders from product, DevOps, product marketing. They interact with managers and leaders. And they have a unique relationship with users and with the communities. So we have an opportunity to get them involved in designing an inclusive technology community through various activities. So some advocates started, in fact. We still see too few of them, but some developers advocates speak about inclusion at conferences. Here I'm sharing two great videos. One about one that's about where to find diverse candidates, and one about how to develop inclusive communities. Are you looking for candidates in all the wrong places by Chloe Condon? And include lesson learned, creating an inclusive space in a decade-old community by Cy Brand. Both videos talks are amazing. I highly recommend you to watch them. It literally takes a great deal of courage to speak about inclusion at technology conferences and with developers communities. So we need to support and encourage these initiatives. As a conclusion and key takeaways, inclusion is real and it's not going away. Inclusive collaboration is critical to drive safety, innovation, and resilient cultures. Understanding and actualizing inclusion and belonging at the workplace is everybody's responsibility, and it needs to be embedded in everyday work, processes, and interaction. Managers need to model the behaviors, so know each person on your team equally, invest harder in people that are different from you, and include your team in important decisions that impact them. Again, I am not an HR professional, and we saw that inclusion is no longer just HR's responsibility. We can all contribute and influence the future of inclusion at the workplace, and this is how you can help. Technology needs inclusive managers more than ever. Test these practices with your teams. Together, design and implement everyday inclusive practices. Make a safe and inclusive collaboration not just a priority, but the priority on your teams. Prioritize and embed inclusion in your hiring plans immediately and for the next 5 years. And spread the word. Talk about inclusion and safety at work. And talk about inclusion and belonging and equity at conferences. When you run a search on YouTube for diversity and inclusion talks, you will see that 99.99% of these are mostly TED Talks and are delivered by women and minorities. That's not very diverse, right? So very little to none diversity and inclusion talks are delivered by Caucasian male managers. Yet the vast majority of technology people managers today are men and Caucasians. So COCAL, it's an organization that specializes in research in diversity and inclusion. They released a very interesting study about men's interest and engagement in diversity, titled "What Majority Men Really Think About Diversity and Inclusion." In the study, men were categorized into 3 archetypes: detractors, persuadable, and true believers. Detractors were those who said D&I was not at all important, and they were 10% of the sample surveyed. Persuadable said D&I is not very or somewhat important, and they were 48% of the sample. And True Believers said D&I is very or extremely important, and they were 42%, which is a fairly high percentage. So this group is the most likely being involved in D&I efforts in organization. So one way you can help is to contribute, to help and contribute, is to speak at conferences, but also develop programs within your own organization to drive more awareness among people managers. Here are 3 talks I wanted to share and that I highly recommend watching. The first one, Octavius Black, talks about empathy in an hilarious fashion. Very smart talk. Are you one of us? The second talk is by Bridget and Clayton from Pivotal. They share tactical practices that anyone can leverage and that are very easy to implement. And the last but not least, John Skeet from Google delivered a 5-minute lightning talk titled Listen, Amplify, Make Space. Learn and act in collaboration. Beautiful. So I'd be happy myself to help anyone submit inclusion proposals at conferences. So please make inclusion a priority and come back next year to share your inclusive practices. All of you, not just women and minorities. We can win at this noble cause if women and diversity are no longer the only one who talk about it. Thank you very much. Hey, hi everyone. Thank you for attending the talk. I'm so glad to get a chance to have a few minutes face-to-face. Let me know if you have any questions. I love this topic that I'm very passionate about. It's not my profession, but it's really important. And I'm very passionate about it. So let me know if you have any questions. If you want to stay in touch and speak offline, I'd be happy to do that too. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you can hear me, actually. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear me. So, oh, awesome. You can hear me. Awesome. So I get back to the chat. So yeah, absolutely. The first thing is to have a topic, something about inclusion or belonging. It could be something really simple, such as what does belonging mean to you? What does belonging means to your organization, and describing what it is, because we don't have enough information about, what it means exactly. Once you have a topic, it's great to have an outline, a proposal. And once you have that, I encourage you to submit to some technology conferences. There are a lot of technology conferences, and I'm happy to give you the link of a site that actually lists all of the technology conferences in the world. But some of them I recommend is obviously the CDCon, the DevOps World, GitLabs, and so on. And submit as many proposals as you can, because we don't know if we are accepted, right? But it's a really important topic, and I saw that many conferences are very interested in that topic, and they encourage actually people to talk about it. So you have a great chances to be accepted. But again, think about a topic and an angle, and talk to people. You can talk to me, but talk to people about, hey, is that a good idea to talk about that? And I think the talks that are really successful are the ones that show practices as well, pragmatic examples. You want to give the audience something that they can take back to their own organization. I hope that helped. Yeah, of course, Marcy, and we can connect. I'll connect with you on LinkedIn and send you those links. Happy to do that. Yeah, absolutely. I highly encourage you to submit your stories. Yeah. You know, I started talking really quickly because we are at time. I started talking recently at conferences. And again, I am not an HR professional. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.